Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the cryptoverse. Today we're going to be talking about Bitcoin. I just want to welcome everyone to the show. If you're still under the 4-year cycle theory, we'll wait for you to potentially change your mind at some point. But I feel like most of the evidence suggests, like we've been saying for the better part of a year now, that it's not a 4-year cycle, and I don't think there's anything that really suggests that it is. um, Back 4 years ago during this time, you can see that the price of Bitcoin was already much more bullish. I mean, we were holding the 20-week moving average. We were really moving up this curve. Okay, and this was after we had been holding the 200-week for quite an extended period of time. And in fact, if you look to see how long we held it, where we would bounce off the 20-week or the 200-week moving average, it was almost, it was like 2/3 of a year. And in the current cycle, we looked at this and we said, okay, well, currently we've bounced off it for about 77 days, but really it's probably going to be a lot longer. And so the reason we talk about this is because lengthening cycles are the name of the game. So welcome to the show. Welcome to Bitcoin. There's nothing really that suggests that there's 4-year cycles, except for the fact that some people think that the halvings mean that we have to peak some certain amount of time after, before the next halving. And we've talked about how that this is really, this is not true. I mean, we had this first peak, back in 2010. We had the second peak in 2013, or sorry, the first peak was in 2011. The second peak was in 2013, and then the third peak was in 2017. So expecting, say, 4 years doesn't really make sense. It doesn't even follow that cycle. Not to mention that if you also measure it from the valley to the valleys, it also doesn't suggest 4-year cycles. And we've made videos on all of this. So go back and watch those videos if you haven't seen them. What we have said is that likely 2019 and 2020 are going to be accumulation years. So what does that mean? It means that for the next several months, if we're down here, fine. If we're up here, fine. But this is likely going to be an accumulation time. It's possible we go down to the 300-week moving average again, which is where we had this wick. It's possible that we do that, and we've talked to you before how in the first cycle the 100-week moving average was kind of held as support. We had the 200-week here, and then the 300-week potentially over here, which these wicks did go down to. With that said, I don't really think the 300-week has provided evidence that it will necessarily be the bottom. I mean, we don't really count wicks, and when we say, what's a few $100s among friends, it looks like that the 200-week has still held pretty well, with just wicks going down below it and some bodies of the candles going below it. But if you go back here, we also had the same thing. We had some candles, some candle bodies slightly going below it, and then some wicks going below the 200-week moving average. So Bitcoin is still on course. Nothing has changed. We're still talking about lengthening cycles. We're still talking about the fact that in December of 2021, we will not be seeing a new paradigm shift in Bitcoin, where we're going to see 6 figures. It's almost certainly not going to happen. This is not financial advice. But if we were to, to say, okay, well, what would we expect? If our price target ultimately, and this is just based on reducing volatility, lengthening cycles, we would say that our price target is likely going to be around 6 figures or so, thereabouts. And it's hard to say exactly where it's gonna happen, but let's just say it's a little over $100,000. Then we would expect at some point in 2021 to really get on a more of an upwards trajectory. Okay, and obviously there's going to be some oscillations in here, and then ultimately we would expect to peak. Oh, oops. This is. Let me redraw this really quick for everyone. So let me zoom out some too. So let's pretend like we're just going to be in here for a while, and then we're going to start moving up. at some point over the next couple of years, and then potentially see a new, paradigm shift in the Bitcoin price. And some people say, well, what does that mean? And what we talked about how is when we're at any given level, we tend to spend a long time there, and then we kind of shoot up to a new level, a new mentality on what Bitcoin is and what its value is. Back down here, Bitcoin was mostly worthless. And then during this accumulation phase, it was worth a few dollars. So people are like, oh, I can assign some actual value to it and I can buy stuff with it. It's actually worth something. And then we get up here, so paradigm shift here, and then this is the new normal. A new paradigm movement occurred in 2013. This was the new normal when Bitcoin was worth a few $100s, okay? And then a new paradigm shift. This was the new normal. Bitcoin is worth a few $1,000s, all right? But each time we're going to spend longer and longer at whatever the new normal is before we go on another paradigm shift to a new blow off top, right? Before then finally returning, okay, back down to the new normal. And the new normal for Bitcoin is if these patterns keep holding up, the new normal is likely going to be, maybe like $30,000 to $50,000. But that's not going to be that new normal where we've had a blow off top and then we've had a bear market. That probably isn't going to happen until the mid to late mid 2020s. So maybe 2025, 2026, we're going to see what the new normal is. And at some point between this new normal and the normal we're in now, we will likely have a speculative mania fueled bubble phase where a lot of new money is going to come in, a lot of dumb money is going to come in. The smart money is accumulating over here while we're still at our new normal, and they're not going to get spooked when in December of 2021, Bitcoin isn't at is not at $50,000. It's gonna be, this is par for the course. Even if it's not at $20,000 by then, it's fine. We would expect a more gradual rise over the course of several years. But we've said this for a long time now that 2019 and 2020 are the accumulation years, maybe even early 2021. So this is the time to be getting into the market. It's not going to be in 2023 when you want to, when you're going to FOMO in. That's not the time to be getting in. The time to be getting in, not financial advice, this is what I do, is now. Is over the course of 2019 and 2020, get in at whatever prices you can get in for that are okay with your risk tolerance. I mean, if you're gonna get upset if the price drops a few $1,000s, or you're going to FOMO in if the price goes up a few $1,000s, then I would say just set up some type of dollar cost average strategy. It could be a dynamic strategy where when the risk goes down and the price goes down in very instantaneously, then you're buying more, and then you're sitting on the sidelines more when the price goes up. So we've talked about this a lot on the channel. If you want to follow along, then check out the Telegram channel, which you can find in the description below. We almost have 2,300 members. It's a growing community. So remember, when you're out there and you see people talking about 4-year cycles, just remember that there really isn't a whole lot of evidence to support it. If we were actually on a 4-year cycle right now, then I would imagine the price would be doing much better. So I think the evidence is already there that it's not a 4-year cycle. And because we've seen reduced macro level volatility over time, again, it makes sense that this is not the case. So, so what we're doing here is we're just saying, this is the time to accumulate. We're not on a 4-year cycle. Get that out of your head. Don't think that has to be the case. If by some miracle that happens, then we'll be prepared for it. But at the same time, we recognize that the math suggests otherwise. And if you're unsure of what I'm talking about, you can go to intothecryptoverse.com. We have reports here on many different coins, and you'll find, I don't know why it's so zoomed in, you'll find one on Bitcoin that was published in January of 2020. called Bitcoin Letters. And if you look at this report, you'll find countless graphs that talk about the four-year cycle theory, and how it's likely not wrong, or how it's likely wrong, and how lengthening cycles are probably what ultimately is what we're going to see. And then I think if you fast forward 3 or 4 years, it's going to be obvious to everyone by that point that that is the case. But by that point, there will also be a lot of people who missed out on that knowledge because they were so set on the four-year cycle theory. So that when 2021 comes and they don't see this new paradigm shift, they're just gonna think, okay, well, it's over. They're gonna pull their money out, and at that point, we've seen it happen time and time again. So some people are going to get left at the station, and it's time to figure out what you're doing now. In the short term, we've talked about this before. Expect some, we were expecting once we saw this moving up, we said, okay, well, the next area of resistance will be the 100-week moving average. We've climbed close to it. We haven't quite hit the 100-week moving average, but until we get above the 20-week moving average, then the bull market is just a dream. It's a dream, until we get above the 20-week. So we're going to wait for that and consider yourself lucky that we're below it now, because you can continue to accumulate at prices that are not, fueled by this type of mania where the risk of getting in at that time is so high. So I would say stay level-headed. I would also say, tell people of this idea of lengthening cycles, share the video, and if you guys like the content, then feel free to check out the Telegram channel in the description below, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. So I hope this has been informative for everyone, and I will talk to you guys next time. Bye.